Cool.
Dealing with the.
Okay, so hi, everybody. Do we have anybody online at this point? No, right? Okay, and so oh, there's Sherry and Julie. Okay. Usual business, I'm here stuck. Great. We just called to order. Has everybody gotten a chance to look at minutes? About minutes? React to minutes? Anybody have any comments about the minutes? I read through, they look quite good, clear.
Yep.
Yeah, all right, so motion to approve.
Motion to
Second, or second, and
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
We're passed, okay. So I think the first item turns out to be one of the more interesting items at this moment in time. So Greg, do you want to start us off on the water level?
Yes, that sounds fine. Let's see, reporting, what happened was last Thursday, our drought intensity was increased from abnormally dry to a moderate drought, D1 status. So that it's not good news.
Officially,
There were
according to
other-
the Northeast update.
Yeah, this is the Northeast drought outlook. The other changes included basically all of Connecticut as abnormally dry, and the drought status in North Jersey is now moderate drought as well. So what's happening is west to east, the level of the intensity is increasing as we go along this season
Towards us.
Yep. So that makes either as abnormally dry or in moderate drought, and I should have looked and see, I don't know if we went to a severe drought status, but it's been now 11 months that we have had some level of drought reporting, either moderate drought or abnormally dry. Looking at the ranking of the monthly charts, that's the first page on the report. You can see the areas that have increased.
I just don't have a
Yeah,
copy.
we don't have a report.
We don't have copies of the report.
Of the water report?
Yeah.
Okay, sure, let me print that.
Send it, right?
You did, I brought mine on.
You brought your own, okay.
I'm sorry.
I have it open. Should I just print it? I have it open.
You can, then I can just.
Or if we put it up on the screen, if we can share it, that way we don't have to run off more paper.
Yeah, would you be able
Sure,
to
just give me
cover?
2 seconds.
Okay, so you can continue, Greg. Let's start.
Yeah, so rainfall status, we'll touch on that next, because we did have some recent precipitation.
Right.
At the time of the report, when Ken reported about a week and a half ago, I guess, we were at month to date was at 0.49. And, there's a wide range annually of what happens in June. The high points have been 3.17, 4.5, 2.6. In 21 and 20, we were down at 1.18 and 1.15. So 0.49 was, lower than the norm. I think these numbers were taken on, if memory serves.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. So I know Ken has got some information
I
on.
updated that one basically, and since then, gotten 0.79 inches more, bringing us to a monthly total of 1.28, which is pretty skinny again for June, and with a yearly number of 18.2 instead of 7.9. So only 0.79 inches, and tomorrow looks like it's going to be dry, which is the last of the month. So that's our number, basically.
Okay.
So 0.28 and 18.29 year to date.
So we've been skirting or not flirting with raising our communications to the town and through the website and through our drought level process.
That's correct.
Can you comment on, we're trying to keep that being a systematic kind of
Yeah.
programmatic process, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. One of the things that sometimes quacks happen.
You're quacking.
I'm quacking. It's dark. Turn this off. Oh, it's Barack Obama calling. Sorry, Barack, I can't talk. Yes, we're technically when we remain in a guarded zone where there's nothing in the criteria. We actually should have, we may have jumped early on saying guarded some months ago, but
Their lowest status?
no, there is one criteria, there is one classification that's, just be.
Stand by.
Yeah, just keep your mind out, don't waste water, not involved with the various steps that we had talked about in the procedure, with the, lawn sprinkling and car washing and all those things. So,
Well,
so guarded is guarded, and it does have some classification, some activities, again, all voluntary, but what's important for people to think about. The other thing about that, I think, is that, we have certainly, and unfortunately, I didn't complete the review that I'm making on the history of what happens between our high point to our low point in that 6 month.
we don't have that for
Yeah,
this month.
and it varies quite a bit. If you get a lot of rain, it goes down like as low as a quarter of an inch drop. Some years ago. At the time, I think the center of the island was buried in water, actually. But we are likely to lose like 3 feet, a foot or more, if we maintain the dryness that we have been having. And, that certainly, to my understanding anyway, that would start to reduce the outflow of fresh water, defending against the saltwater intrusion.
Precisely. Precisely that's what we're thinking about.
Yes.
We know that there's a
We know that happens.
dynamic. In the winter, we're pushing out enormously, and if we get too low, we are reversing the hydrodynamics.
We're pushing out this minute, right? We're pushing out the whole season. The percentile chart, which is the next page, that shows the history since 2016, and you can see we did pretty well in 2018 and 2019. The wells were doing quite nicely.
But we are back to where we were in 2016 for the same time of year.
That is exactly correct.
And that's alarming.
Yes, absolutely.
So again, we have the feeling of being alarmed. The question is, are we dissatisfied because of our alarm with our levels? Are we thinking that guarded is right? Lisa was saying, we might want information posted on the electric sign near the circle.
My thought was, even if it's monthly, asking them to put a monthly post saying what status we're at, or bi-weekly.
Nice to have the chart on our web page that people can say, just go to there and please take a look at WAC.
It's there.
Post it there.
Yeah, that
It is there,
that previous slide, which shows, that we're in the beige, we're in the brownish area.
Yeah, but isn't the point of changing the drought standard or recommendation to influence people's behavior in order to have some impact on water conservation?
I would think so, yes.
So we have right now very loose rules and laws with respect to watering lawns and things.
And enforcement as well.
And enforcement. So I would say that if we want to influence people's behavior, then given the data that we can see here, and then on the next page along here, there's another one where you look at the long-term trends, and it's clearly a declining curve. Here on section 5, I think it is.
That's correct. That's the raw data. Those are actually.
Okay, but it is the data we have.
Yes.
Okay, if that's the data we have, and we're trying to influence people's behavior in terms of conserving water, it seems to me that we should increase the drought level to whatever the next level is at this point, and make that recommendation to the town board.
I will voice caution. I don't know if Joe wants to voice any caution. I will voice caution. If we are not following something that's somewhat objective, people will say, well, you know, you're just, there's not strength behind it. But I think what Lisa is saying may be achievable. If guarded is a pretty good statement. We're in current conditions, guarded. If I saw that at the center circle, I would think something's up.
Right, but you're very water savvy, Peter, and what we're trying to do with these things is to reach to a much wider audience, many of whom are completely oblivious to the aspect that their water comes from a well, for example.
No, I'm absolutely with you.
So they do not conserve water.
Agreed.
So if you want them to conserve water, it seems to me that if you're not reaching them with all of our educational efforts, then another way is to increase this drought level. Look, I'm not a Chicken Little person when it comes to this by any stretch, but I look out the window and I see the sunny days and I see this data.
And the smoke coming down from Canada.
And I just think, gee whiz, I would rather be cautious with an abundance of caution rather than hesitant or tentative about calling a spade a spade.
The issue that I would have with basically the center, we still have a lot of water under us in the center, basically, even though it's lower, and that's what that indicates in center wells. The places that really indicate areas like Silver Beach and Menandic Peninsula and so forth. If you take a look at the Silver Beach numbers, we're above median this time of the year with regards to the numbers that we would have. So we're fine in Silver Beach, which is, it has more sensitive.
I would dispute that.
Okay.
And the reason I would dispute that is I went to look at the Silver Beach monitoring well. And the Silver Beach monitoring well is on Brander Parkway at the intersection of Lilliput. That is actually one of the more elevated parts of Silver Beach. I do not think that we are properly measuring the health of the aquifer in Silver Beach, because if we wanted to do that, we would have a monitoring well further down in the point of Silver Beach. That well is within at least 500 feet of surface expressions of water.
That's true.
There's no other monitoring well on Shelter Island that is near a pond or a surface expression of water. So that is distorting, in my opinion, the reading on the depth or the health of the aquifer in Silver Beach. We should have a separate monitoring well down where people are experiencing saltwater intrusion.
We have not had it in the way of experiencing that I've heard of any saltwater intrusion. So I have not heard of any.
I have,
Really?
yes.
So I do understand the concern. I share the concern.
So I'm
want to be focused
on a bit of
our
a Silver
response.
Beach soapbox right now, but I think, if this is, we have blunt instruments with which to measure the aquifer.
Do they have a pool, these people that have a salting issue? I'm just curious, because we've been measuring the Brander for gosh, how many years? We have a lot of data on it. And I've been tracking it for 20 years.
Yeah.
So basically, that to me is a real sharp indicator, as well as down near.
Well, if I look at section 3 here, it looks like all is well.
Something very unusual happened, and I don't know why. This is the pattern of the well heights, of the current well heights versus the history. And I guess it's part 3 there. Go to the next page, please. Yeah, this is the one. So something, it was a very, that pattern is, we often get when, for wells that are very close, to your comment, there is another well a little farther down, but it bounces up and down with the tide.
Well, it's right in the center.
Yeah, as does the Big Ram Island well and the Little Ram Island. You look at them historically, and depending on the tide, they're very much impacted by tide. Some of the other wells, it's very unusual. Rocky Point and Brander and Menantic. We usually don't see a situation, when we have the big four wells dropping, below the median, we usually see those wells having the same effect. This is very.
Not correlated.
This is different. This pattern is.
Well, what is Shorewood? Very interesting. I mean, Shorewood and Silver Beach are very high.
So it's, again, I completely agree with Doug's comment that we're trying to influence behavior in appropriate ways. So let's just talk for a second about what's the behavior that we would be wanting.
I think before the, maybe just awareness would be, Lisa's idea about getting that SI now moderate drought status.
Yeah,
Very simple.
that's like raising our alert status even without raising our alert status, without contradicting our formalization here.
Yes,
It would be a big step to have that Shelter Island drought alert or guarded drought warning. Near shore areas don't whatever.
And Peter, if I may, I mean, even guarded, like we understand what that means. We understand the levels of the status. But as to your point, Doug, when people are driving by, guarded, what the heck does that mean? I don't know what that means.
Compared to what?
So keeping it simple enough that the observer, the general observer can drive by and say, oh, I didn't know that we needed to be concerned about drought on the island. So that's my point, is just keep it really.
So I just want to make one more point here, having to do with wasting water. We had a situation in Silver Beach where a new homeowner was using 2 sprinklers to water a lawn, a new construction, well past the period of time when you're allowed to establish a fresh lawn. So 2, and going all day, middle of the day, a clear-cut property, so no shade to reduce evaporation. They didn't know. Fortunately, Mike DeSanctis went by and showed them, the code. The code allows someone to continue watering with one handheld unit, which could be an elevated sprinkler, without any kind of restriction. However, if you change the drought status, all of that is off the table, and you can't water your lawn.
So again, there's two actions, things that we could do.
But I'm just saying,
One is
that's
to
an
raise our drought
example
status.
of actually affecting behavior in a way that is intended to conserve the aquifer.
Right. Again, though, I would be much happier if we feel that we need to change our criteria so that this puts us into a higher level of alert. That would be, feels okay to me. But to decide to violate our criteria doesn't feel okay. Lisa's action of, everybody goes past the circle. I don't know, I mean, I need to ask the board folks here. If the WAC had a clear, very concise message about guarded drought status, is that okay for us to get that into the circle on the traffic?
That's a pretty mild
sign?
I think we can ask.
It is under the other department.
No, you're thinking of like a constructed sign versus the police.
Oh, are you
sign.
thinking of?
No, we're thinking of asking,
sign.
like Peter
Yes, yes.
or Jim, if we can
just like we announced.
have 1 day a week or one every 2 weeks and just put it up for a day, preferably a Saturday when everyone's
I
here.
would actually think with this weekend coming up, we wanted to run the weekend. I would think we would.
I would think we want it all this weekend, and I think that will affect behavior a lot more than raising a level that nobody will notice.
Yes.
It's already crowded out there.
Well,
and I got to say, somebody just said the constructed sign, like the Smokey the Bear.
Right.
Fire warning. drought warning, extreme, moderate, severe,
That's a great idea down the line. I think it's a
Right.
great idea, but I think now, in order to affect
Yes.
behavior immediately,
Between now and then.
absolutely.
you have to have.
I'm just thinking, and those would be, at the ferry, as you get off the ferry, hi, I've never been here before. Oh, they're in a drought, maybe I better not waste water.
So, okay, so I don't want to lose this
Yeah.
constructed sign concept. It's a new idea that I think that we all are sort of seeing some of the wisdom in. And then I don't want to lose this idea of an immediate notification that would be at the traffic circle or I don't
Two
know,
other, we can ask the fire department as well, they have the electronic sign out here in the.
Yes.
right?
And then the second thing is have a banner too on the website, not
Yes.
just a drought button, but we'll see if we
So,
can get a banner
you
on all. just-
Notifying people that we're in a guarded
Yeah.
status, it's been a drought.
Yeah,
And to your point,
what would you like the words to say besides guarded?
That's the
Right.
key now.
I was also thinking, excuse me, Peter,
ahead.
because I will
Go
lose
for it,
this
Lisa.
thought.
Go for it.
So I have to get it when it's here. I was thinking that maybe the fire department, they could put something on relationally, fires and drought. So, I mean, we're in a point of
Well, we probably are.
continental
I don't know.
smoke drift here, so that could be very apropos that people might just pay attention to.
So now the key is how do we work, the 6 of us sitting around, it's hard to wordsmith 10 words or 6 words that we're going to get on this sign. We need those 6 words or 10 words.
Guarded water.
So
And so, I mean,
I don't think guarded can, only because, as I say, I don't think people understand what that means.
I think we should use the drought language from the map because it can be as simple as moderate drought, conserve water.
Modern draft conservative.
But I'm totally with you, Peter, on the policy. We specifically have a quantifiable way to determine our level in the policy. And we had left it open to saying perhaps we'll revisit that, change the criteria as we see what fits. But I don't think we can do that right now. That's
in order to raise our.
I think the messaging can be more effective. Doug, you bring up a really, really good point that some neighborhoods perhaps need another mechanism to change policy like irrigation rules because of their localized sensitivity. The current irrigation law is really set up to be conducive for island-wide use. And right now, I don't think it's appropriate to say to somebody in the center, hey, you can't, with a single hose, water your garden, but somebody in Silver Beach may be experiencing, that level of criticality with their water. Does the homeowners association, since you have such a strong one in Silver Beach, do they have a mechanism to invoke a policy change
No, we do
for your own neighborhood?
All we can do is influence by way of a quality of life page on our website.
Okay.
And in there, with water usage, light pollution, noise pollution, construction, there are links to the town code, as well as some wise words about.
Okay, so you don't issue a fine for somebody who hasn't cut their grass and.
We have no ability to do that. We have no ability to even raise a derelict house in Silver Beach.
Right.
And I believe that's the result of not actually being a legal homeowners association.
It's legal,
where
it's just voluntary.
It's a voluntary. It's, in other words, you're not required to be.
We're 501c4.
Just pay member.
Because what I think we're uncovering now is that there are some neighborhoods that have perhaps even more special needs. And by default, I'm thinking, the nearshore overlay is perhaps one of those. But even within the nearshore overlay, there are many neighborhoods that don't have the same.
Well, that's right. I mean, if you have a high topography.
Right, like.
Any beach,
Exactly, yeah. So those
heights.
folks would fall into the same category, but perhaps.
Robust aquifer underneath them. It's in the places where you have a low-lying peninsula.
Yeah.
That are the most vulnerable.
Can I ask you, Doug, what is the effectiveness of your homeowners association in that, do people go to your site and read it and go under the advisement of your site? Like, do you have any way of sort of getting feedback?
We don't have that. To be perfectly honest, I'm not the person that manages the website, so I can't answer your question. I'm sure that I don't know whether we have the ability to look at traffic, et cetera.
You certainly have the ability to send an email.
Well, we do. We do email members on a variety of topics from time to time.
And as you grow more concerned, I mean, I would definitely think this is something to target your own community with. I also, in listening to you, you know, we have Alice here. I strongly would push for each community should be doing as much citizen science as possible. So if you have a question about the USGS well and its accuracy or how much it's revealing, you may want to be thinking about, is there some sort of probing of nearer shore data and information that the community can bring back to the town?
I want another well.
Yeah, well,
I want
see you
another
advocating.
monitoring well
The question is
in Silver Beach.
how to achieve that.
How do we do that?
We do have a well already. It's not monitored, but there's a well there.
At the bird sanctuary?
Yes, at the intersection right there at that point.
At the
There's a-
point, oh, yeah, yeah.
There's a round
Manhole cover.
manhole cover in there, and that's where it is.
So you may want to come together as a community to say, we need a little bit more, because
That's
we're being
also a
told
high
this,
area.
and this might not be quite right.
The data's there, you know, the history is there. It's just that, because, you know, when I started to focus on the higher wells that act kind of as that's our pressure, you know, that's where the pressure pushes the water out. The two rams and that were so remarkably, you know, when you would do the hourly check, it would just go up and down and up and down, high tide up, low tide down. And you never know when they come and do that. Is it at the high point, or is it the low point, or is it in the middle? You
Well, it
know,
would be nice to put one of those devices that provide the continuous.
The real time. So we
measurements.
have 5 devices that are working. We were sent a link to all 5 devices. I looked at all 5 of those devices. Only one of those 5 devices shows responsiveness so far to the recent rainfalls, pulling back up again. The other 4 are unaffected, indicating that either the ground hasn't yet absorbed the moisture or it ran off. It never is going to absorb the moisture. And we can continue to watch that, but that these are important indicators to us. The one that is actually absorbing, that is responding, is the one at the head of West Neck. The others, one over by Hay Beach and a couple of others, seem to be, you know, again, things are hard, things have run off, whatever. The absorption is not happening just yet. So I would just like to get closure.
We need, Chief Reed said, sure, remember people have risen by at 30 miles an hour, so can I have some words?
So we need words, right? That's what we want closure on. We need words on what those.
Joe suggests, what did you suggest?
We're officially in a moderate drought, conserve water.
Exactly.
That's it.
You know,
People can.
is there any especially near shore, or is that just
That's individual. I think he said that already. It should be up to the
the
organization.
communities
It's
to
always been a
communicate
big
with their?
hassle with us here in doing it, because all of a sudden you have Silver Beach affected, people in town say, what do you mean? I
don't have a problem
I
here.
can't wash my truck because you guys don't have any water down there? That's,
I know, the one island, one water, and everybody being treated equally, it's a hard thing to square. But the truth is, near shore is where we need people to not misbehave.
For the most part.
No,
For the most part, but not exclusively.
But not
Yeah.
exclusively.
So I'm happy to let that go and say it doesn't need to be there and just say, keep it simple, stupid.
How many, there's many characters, right? Do we know how many characters we get on the sign?
I don't know, but he's saying short because people are going by, so, you know.
Yeah, that's why I think short is best.
That's all we've got. Now, moderate drought, conserve water.
Water, all weekend long.
Fire department can do a little bit more, and I say that mostly because the way it's oriented, you're at a stop sign. No, it's really to the 114.
I mean, that's not a sign I generally would look at, even though it's very vibrant. Lights up.
But yeah, it's funny how the one in the circle, you definitely look at that, like,
Because you're slowing down.
yeah. Right, Andrew wanted to comment.
Can we delete moderate?
So could it be drought advisory?
Could it be drought?
Drought,
Conserve
conserve water.
Sure.
Okay.
We're all good on this?
Yeah.
Yes.
3 words, that's pretty good.
I do like advisory.
You like the word
I just like it.
drought
That's-
advisory.
I'm not married.
I think drought is much more powerful
I mean, without moderate.
without the word of advisory.
Well, without moderate and without advisory, Doug is suggesting.
Yeah.
Because advisory is too voluntary. Okay.
So let's
yeah.
just think the next step.
Okay.
The next step could be, it's a bit of a thought experiment, severe drought. I mean, I just want to make sure that if we're going to take the adjective out,
The next step would be official messaging from the town as we implement
Okay.
policy change.
Yeah, severe drought is the next level above the moderate drought. That's what it's called.
That's when issues
Okay.
occur.
But we're not there.
And then we have
Not there right
requirements.
now, that's.
I know you.
I don't want to
Okay.
do something now that doesn't anticipate what the next step.
Okay, but I think we did, I know to think this through, so.
Let's save a little
The
powder.
plan, I think we'll be okay.
Save a little powder to make, yeah.
For some other bad months, like July, we will be there.
Okay, so I want to get you guys out of here in an hour and a half and not keep this going for forever. So unless we need to, I think we've got what we needed to achieve there. So the public events, so the event under the tent was good. I have various kinds of self-criticism around my own participation, but nothing bad. I think that basically it was a very good event. We had about 40 people.
Good. That's very
We had
good.
50 last time, so next time will be even better, but point is not to stop now. So we have some dates with the library yet?
Yes, of course, I didn't bring that, but Jessica has secured a July date, and as I look for it, I will ask, how do we want to break these topics up? Because we have July, August, and conceivably September, so I'm not sure what you covered in June. What did you get feedback from the public?
I got a lot.
They want to talk about.
Yes, I got a fair amount of, I got a lot of people. That
The
said,
other thing, Peter, there were some repeat customers there.
Oh, yes.
There were folks that were at last summer's event
yep,
that came around, and I thought that meant that they found the topic compelling.
Yes.
yeah, BJ.
I have a suggestion for August. I don't know if you would agree with this, but by then we will have a complete draft of the comprehensive plan. And perhaps the title could be the comprehensive plan on water. Like come and talk, maybe we can pull out, because water is handled in many different chapters in the plan. We could pull something out, Meg and I, to hand out to people and say, this is how the comprehensive plan is addressing water. What do you think?
Mhm.
Do you want to add anything?
It's ready, it's good.
Yeah.
So I'm good with that, but let's start with the sooner, we don't want events sooner rather than later. We're talking about a July event and. Yes, oh, okay, I can't see. Yes. So, okay, so let's let Stella come speak to us. Stella?
Hi, guys. Thanks so much. One comment and one request. The comment is, I think it may be a slippery slope if we ever get to the point where we put restrictions in one area of the island and not the other. I get the car washing in the center versus elsewhere, but I think we're all in this together, and we also don't want to create a problem where one doesn't already exist.
Absolutely.
The request I have is somewhere along the lines of what you all just decided to do with the sign, which is, can you also put it back on the town website landing page? It had been there for a nanosecond, and I was just getting ready to do a Heights distribution to all our members, and I went to do the link and it was gone the next day. And I just feel that I, as a water district, can send out information. I can, as a water district, turn people off if I feel they're abusing. But to have the town and people focus also on the town having some teeth or some skin in the game, I think would be helpful. So that's my request.
Oh, and I would be inclined to ask, can we simply honor that request? Is there any reason we can't get that back to the homepage?
It's going back on the homepage. There was another link. Stella had sent an email about this, and we contacted Christina, who manages the website. There was another link, I think, for the comprehensive plan or something that was
The drought button?
It should be back up,
Yeah, it's
right?
up there.
Yeah.
The drought button is on there.
Yeah, okay, so it's back up there still.
It says drought status. You click it and it takes you to the drought page.
It had been taken off for the winter time for, because it was a banner that was sort of,
It's taxes, tax receipt page.
that's it, yep, exactly, yeah.
All right,
So,
thanks so much.
She manages the clicks and she
No
saw.
problem, so thank you. And is there anyone else who's online who had their hand up or wants, or let us know? Or somebody let me know if somebody is signaling. So if we can return to the events creation. So I think that people were, look, we've just sent out, there are two topics, 4 and 5 here. One is this, we've sent out mailers to everybody in the high nitrogen triangle, and the mailers. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Pete, but did we confirm the library topics?
No, I'm not trying to move on.
Oh, okay,
I'm only saying what's been stimulated in public awareness.
I gotcha, okay.
Is in the high nitrogen triangle, people have been told, you're in a high nitrogen triangle, we feel you might want to be tested, we will do this for free for you. We have alerted people to their drinking water issues. One of the feedbacks that I got was we had criticized, in the context of the library event in June, we had criticized the use of reverse osmosis filtration as concentrating the waste back into the aquifer and using a much higher amount of water. So if you're in the nearshore overlay, you can see how that might in fact be a concern. So those criticisms came out, but the truth is that for the individual, reverse osmosis filtration often can be protective. So I don't mean to, to tell somebody the wrong information. I think that's important information to acknowledge. It's an individualistic solution to having clean drinking water in your home. And it has some antisocial consequences, which may or may not be significant depending on where you are. But people, I think, want to know about drinking water. And this topic of the possibility of public water for the center has become reasonably
Attractive.
not just it's attractive to me, and it's also scares people or whatever, or people are worried about money or whatever they're worried about. But I do feel that the discussion of where are we headed, where you guys have led us, I'm hoping that the two of you are the leads for an event in early July, sometime in July.
The date
Public water supply.
The date is July 27th, by the way,
Okay.
at 5 o'clock.
And, okay, would you guys be interested in leading the discussion of public water supply? You seem like you two seem like the most qualified among us.
Answer for you, but I'm
I'm happy to
Take the act on the road again?
on the road.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so we have a July 27th topic. And all of us should come and support Lisa and Andrew, because they're doing great stuff. Go ahead.
So, listening to the June 6th town board video, Joe Corning, work session video, there will still be a lot of unknowns as of
Absolutely.
July 27, particularly in terms of the results of the water quality testing in Satcham's Woods and how that would drive the cost, blah, blah, blah. So,
Are we too soon? That's the
no, I just want to make sure that I don't want to raise expectations about there being anything definitive on July 27th, but just a general discussion of what this is all about and how it could play out and so forth. I think
And what I just said about, reverse osmosis filtration, the topic really is how do I get clean drinking water?
Right. Okay.
I don't think it's too early at all. I think it's an excellent opportunity to continue conversation.
Fine.
And this is a great opportunity for feedback. We are at a point in the project where we can steer in a lot of different directions. And community engagement, I think, could never be a bad thing.
Fine.
Particularly if this is a way to engage folks who may be feeling adamant or vocal about private connections or no private connections
Fine.
or cost. I think it's a great way to get feedback. We have enough information to know in concept what we're trying to achieve. And we have the opportunity to steer the project to best fit the community.
Yeah, or residents who are disenfranchised because they're renters.
Yeah, that as well. And for clarity, the RO discussion, I think, is very relevant to talk about scale. Folks are using reverse osmosis on a separate tap for drinking water in their sink. That is, for most people, the best way to get safe drinking water on their property. If there are whole house systems, or like the Presbyterian Church, those systems that purify all of the water that goes through the building, they generate thousands of gallons of byproduct over the course of the year at high concentration levels. And those types of systems are becoming more popular with new construction, with higher end, larger homes. And so that type of installation is something that, again, a personal choice, nothing here really restricts that, but there is a huge difference, and certainly we don't want to, as a committee, discourage the use of RO systems, because for many cases, it is the best or only solution for a homeowner. But at scale, it can be largely problematic.
Counterproductive.
Counterproductive.
Is there we don't have anything in the code regarding that, should we?
No, and even
should be.
broader jurisdictions like, county health department don't require any sort of capture and disposal of those byproducts.
Really?
And at the church, we do that because it is a high volume of water and a high concentration. We've even tested the concentrations levels to see what it is we're putting back out. And so we capture and treat it like wastewater. But there is no obligation to do that for a homeowner.
But
I don't-
where on Long Island, it's going into a sewage system, which is presumably being treated, as opposed to here where it's going back into the aquifer.
Potentially, potentially. I mean, here is kind of, right, the irony is that it's going back in the ground, presumably 100 feet or so from where you took it out of the ground.
Right, and then to your neighbor.
Or you get closer to your neighbors than it is to you. So in concept, that's not, that's not a solution, I think, at scale for the island, is to say, hey, if you've got, contamination issues, we'll just buy everybody an RO system. That's ultimately worsening the conditions.
And I can't imagine that we're being more cost effective by everybody individually running their own sewage treatment plants and water supply.
Well, for drinking water, it's fine. I mean, you don't consume that much.
Exactly.
Yeah, so making these distinctions, smart distinctions, like, only for your sink rather than for your whole new house, that's good things to educate around.
That's right.
In a session about public water.
I don't think I would never be in a position to say, X amount of gallons is too many, but that's the educational component that, using it is essential for some folks, but, that's not a solution. That's not a sustainable solution for the island. And certainly at scale, it can cause more harm.
Yeah, we don't have a constraint on that in the building code.
No.
Presently.
No.
We should put that as a future topic to discuss then. Because
All right, so, yes.
future topic, not anymore now.
Everybody should keep track of, future topics keep coming up, and you need to feed them back to me when I'm setting agenda and saying, what did I miss? Because, otherwise we can't pull in all of these things. So again, sticking to a path, therefore, we have a July event. We now have a topic, we have lead speakers.
Okay, I just need dates for August, and I just need a date, if everybody wants to.
Okay.
I mean, we kept it a Thursday night because it's a good night, and we kept it at 5 o'clock because so we can keep a set time, like the last Thursday of the month, et cetera, at 5 o'clock, then in people's minds, it might trigger recognition,
That seems smart.
That's good.
just like regular meetings.
Right.
So, I mean,
Labor Day weekend too.
is that Labor Day weekend?
I think that's good.
So is that a good, it would be the 24th, or you're saying the 31st you want to do?
31?
I can float it by Jessica and see which ones, if they're both available.
And refine the topic, although BJ's suggestion that we're basically going back to comprehensive at that point makes some sense. Is there yet another library event is there something else we want to speak to the community about? Is there anyone else who wants to be, and also, Joe, I hate to volunteer you, however,
I will.
people want access.
So many do it, though.
Yes,
You want access.
I intend to attend those meetings. The last one I couldn't, but I'll.
So do you want to do August, Joe?
No, but I would like to at least be at the July 27th, Do I want to do it? I would prefer not to host, but I would like to participate. Yeah.
And again, I'm happiest under the tent, but I'm happy to, I speak a lot when I host, so I'm happy to have others host too.
Fertilizer?
Yeah.
Well, that was a whole other topic that I would hope that we could present, but,
Yeah, and
you know,
well, why wouldn't we have an event that includes Tamara and, yeah,
well, we could, but I mean, I think what we need to do is, we tend to be here and here and here, and it's all very important. But if we're going to present a topic about public water and everything tangential to that, can we segue into fertilizer? I don't know.
not in the same meeting, in the same event, yet a third event.
We could do it September,
So we could set up a September fertilizer event.
it's a little after the season, but
It is a little after the season, on the other hand.
That's when they start.
And also, this is, now you're talking, for fertilizer, you're talking homeowners. And not, right? So it's, in many ways,
They're the people making those decisions.
Paul, yeah, I
Yeah,
would.
that's when they fertilize.
so I mean, it could be twofold. It could be a fertilizer and irrigation discussion,
Yeah. that'd be
because those are both very important.
That's a pretty,
great. Yeah.
so fertilizer and irrigation discussion for September. I will be speaking to the Shelterlands community. I attended the Menantic Creek Keepers meeting last month. I'll be, I don't know, I have a date yet for the Shelterlands. Doug,
Silver
you were-
Beach Association, July 22nd.
Right, and you were
Saturday.
hoping
You
that I would
are
join?
you
I'm the
are our
speaker?
featured speaker.
All right, so let's talk a little bit. But this job is evangelizing. This job is getting out there. So I just encourage you guys.
Peter, we will have a pulpit for you.
But the rest of you too. I mean, it's all of us. All right, so if we have events underway here, do we have a follow-up needed on the mailing? Is there any information back from the mailing? Are we receiving things?
We are definitely getting a response. Coco, how many people do you think have responded?
Thousands.
We only sent out 400, so I can't have gotten the responses.
Okay.
We sent out 434.
Yep.
We've received 32 via email and approximately 79 actually in the mail.
So,
25%.
good. Well, and I just got one more.
And I have 2 more.
Oh,
Wow.
Right. And everybody out there, we want send in your cards. It's free testing and we need the information and.
The response is well over 100 then, if we add it all up.
Over 100.
That's very good.
That's very good.
Very good.
5%, maybe we'll approach 50% by the time,
Yeah. Excellent.
Amber says 116.
yeah, that's a great conversation.
Mention it to your community groups, especially if, they're in the if you're in the near shore.
I tried.
I mean, you're in the hydrogen triangle.
We want such a program in Silver Beach.
Yes, I've been getting, that was one of the feedbacks, was that people who are just outside of the tri-nitrogen triangle. In fact, on Midway Road, David Hoffman, who was involved in setting up Menantic Creek Keepers, he was just outside of the line and his neighbors are just inside and saying, why didn't I get one? I'm just, 2 doors down. So I wonder if people who are just outside of the triangle can they request?
Yeah, because we did do some abutters, so like when we did pull the addresses, we got people like 2 to 3 properties on either side of the line. So if someone feels like they're really close, they can reach out to me,
I'll mention to David and yeah.
And we did discuss the center being the starting point.
Yes.
And then going to other areas. So this is the first step.
Okay.
But I think at the end, we wanted to take it to all the Near Shore areas eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. We were going to do our own water survey in Silver Beach on use, treatment, and disposal. But because we could not really guarantee that we would be holding this information confidential, we've tabled that. So, we would very much like something coming from the town that collected such information.
And that would be there'd be different things you'd test for. You're sure it would be more emphasis on chlorides and, right? The solar intrusion indicator.
That's right. There's no nitrate down there.
So that is another one of these future business things that really we should keep in mind. Now, we need a similar sort of thing because it's always, we were talking before about not triggering what Estella said, not, one neighborhood against another neighborhood. This is really, it's all integrated. And it's all an integrated process. The water that presses down here is what is causing outflow. When we don't have water in the center, that's where we're in danger. When we have drought, we're in danger of saltwater.
I'm just wondering, Peter, though, now that people are here, especially in these outlying areas, if this isn't a good opportunity to poll them. There are more households that are occupied.
You could do a survey, just an informational survey gathering, do you have a water filtration system? Do you have a sprinkler system? And just trying to gather general water usage information. I mean, now would be the time to do a poll.
Structure.
You do a poll without really collecting sensitive
yeah.
information from people.
Yeah, and so that's something that the homeowners associations could be doing.
Right. Say that again, I'm sorry.
Meg, could you?
Meg, could you repeat that?
It's just what you were saying, actually. Doug was suggesting I get a show of hands, but say it the way you're saying it.
So what we were saying is, what you could do is an informal, do a survey or a poll asking people, do you have a water filtration system? Do you use a sprinkler system? All the different questions that you have concerns about. Do you test your water regularly? Just kind of to gather information on people's water knowledge and their awareness of their area. And then you'd kind of know how aware your area is. Like, you can even ask a question, are you concerned about saltwater intrusion in your area? You could do a general poll like that, but you can't do something that's gonna, ask for sensitive information. You can do something that's kind of gonna educate you on their understanding and figure out what we need to do a better job educating the public on. If you do that kind of survey, but you're not gonna ask for what were your water results, but do you test your water regularly? Just to see kind of how aware people are. So you could do something like that.
But then wouldn't the result of that be that you could go to that locale and then send them out something to the effect, do you want your water tested, like we did in the center?
Yeah.
I think that's what people were.
I would be much more comfortable along those lines, that coming from the town than from a nonprofit homeowners association.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we could send out a survey. We could put a survey on the website and just have people, send out.
That's a great idea.
Just to collect information on people's water awareness, and all the homeowner associations could send that out in their mailing. But, kind of come up with a list of questions and what kind of information those questions would provide us and how would it be useful? Because we don't want to ask questions that are pertinent.
Are you doing this also by email?
Well, we have no mass mailing method for the town. So we don't have a way to just email the town, but we can post it on the website, we can advertise for it, and then all the homeowners associations can email their people and say, hey, check out this survey, please fill it out. We can get it out that way.
So the construction of a survey for a nearshore survey, similar, not exactly water testing, but survey for nearshore area to begin to gather information from people from nearshore. I would like to put that as a future for the next time agenda item. We want to continue to pursue that good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there other follow-ups on the mailing that we just, Andrea?
So 115 or so responses. Should I understand that to mean 115 people want tests? Or are there different ways that people could respond?
No, it's either yes, I want a test, or no, I don't.
That's all we have.
No is I didn't mail anything back. So if they're mailing it back, it's a yes, I want my water tested. So we have 115 people who've signed up to have their water tested.
And have taken the positive step of putting a stamp and getting it to the post office or bringing it over to the other side of the street.
And we have secured the funding?
Yes.
We're funded.
First, we need to figure out exactly how many responses we have, how
Okay.
much it's gonna cost us, and then we'll request for WQI for the monies that we need.
And they don't need to.
Because they've already indicated that they're in favor of the project, but because we don't have a dollar amount to get approved by them,
Yeah.
we can't quite ask them yet.
And, it's not it doesn't fall into the scope of one of the water improvement categories that we can operate with in the WQI. We could, and
That's going to come up again when we talk to Liz a little bit.
well, what we do have monies that are available for evaluations to, and that money, we got up to 10%. That includes Coco is, that's where her money gets Yes, paid to. So we have to find out how much it is and what does it look like in the budget? How much we've spent on
If we're using.
investigative, evaluation type of thing.
It's great having you keeping us coordinated with WQI.
And someone has a vendor who's actually going to do this, all that's lined up?
Yes. Yes, so we've coordinated with a vendor.
Great.
And what's gonna happen is, we'll also help coordinate like the scheduling of the water tests with the vendor by giving them, a list of everybody who wants their water tested. And so what I'm gonna do is once I see how many people we have and kind of where they're spread out on the triangle, and do a little master spreadsheet, break it down by sections of the triangle based on watersheds. And then we'll send that master spreadsheet to the water testing company, and they will fill out all the responses, all the nitrate levels, everything, and then delete all the homeowner information. So all we have is the area and the levels. So we won't be receiving any of the homeowner information from the water test company. So we won't have any.
But the homeowners will.
But then the homeowners will receive directly from the water testing company their full results and a letter explaining them.
Cool.
Is there any provision for somebody who wants to volunteer their information?
I mean, they can always volunteer to provide that with us, but we're not gonna request that of everybody. No, we're not soliciting. If someone wants to give it to us, they can.
And can the test be pulled?
Which is why we don't go there.
Outside, or do they have to get access to the
They do
house?
several probably.
Well, we're gonna try to sort that out with the water testing company. We want them to be per standards. So however a traditional water testing company would do their testing, we're gonna do the same standard. So typically you need someone to be home so you can take it from a faucet, usually it's the kitchen sink. So when we try to coordinate with homeowners, we're trying to coordinate for when they're there. And we're gonna break it down into like 10, 15-minute appointments, and everybody on one street, try to get them all in.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for doing this, Meg, because this is
Yeah, this is,
sort of good information collecting.
This is-
Super Geek in me is very excited,
Well, we're happy about that.
very excited.
okay, so if we feel like unless there's other questions on this topic, I'd like to briefly just ask about the status of the investigation of Sachem's Woods as a possible siting for, how do we expect that to play out? When will that work be done? Do we know?
I think in the next few weeks, we'll see preliminary layouts for use at Sachem's Woods, how, like from a functionality standpoint, where we would want to locate equipment, access, et cetera. Then we'll have to decide in conjunction with Suffolk Water, is that suitable to us, and to the community? And once there's consensus about the layout, they'll commence the test well. They want to test in the immediate vicinity of where the actual infrastructure will be placed, the actual wells will be in, to get the most accurate reading. So that is what's happening on their end. We haven't heard back yet about layouts. That's forthcoming. The other thing that's happening with regard to this concept is that the annual grant application period is up for, the deadline is approaching for water-related infrastructure projects. And so Suffolk Water is working with my office and our town grant writer to compile the relevant documentation to see if this particular project would be eligible for funding. So it's not an obligation to go forward with the project. It's not an obligation to, to pay for anything at this stage. It's just that there's simply an annual deadline with which they receive requests for funding for water projects. And so that's at the end of July. So this project meets most of the criteria to make it eligible for an application, and we want to send that application in. That's the only other thing that's happening in the next few weeks. But that, I think, will hopefully help guide the community as to whether this is a project that they want to pursue. In seeking the grant application, we'll be forced to work out costs, specific layouts, locations, et cetera. So it's a good exercise for generally advancing the project for our own discussion purposes.
Okay, yeah.
I heard about some objections to the idea of pumping water from Sachem's into the center, affecting other areas down, so to speak. downstream from that location, low-lying areas that have previously been flooded, Cogden Road over, many years ago, about affecting their water table from that transfer of water from there up to here, so to speak, a small elevation, I'm not too sure what it is. So just to let you know that there were some other issues that maybe we should be cognizant of in order to.
I'm sorry, the concern is that,
Yeah, I didn't get the transfer.
You're transferring water from one location to another, which is a little bit higher.
yeah,
Then another low-lying area adjacent to the center.
with surface waters, you mean?
If you remember back,
Or low ground, or elevated water table?
probably clay layers, probably, that are affecting the near Cogden area. There's a pond, several ponds along the road there. And probably was it 7 years ago, 8 years ago, we had a lot of rain and that whole area was flooded. It's near the Kelb property along that area. And it remained there until we brought pumps in and had to pump it into the bay, basically, several miles. We put pipes in order to get rid of the.
And there is concern within.
Yeah, there was concern about what would that do to our issue here if all of a sudden we changed the balance of water between locations.
Well, fortunately, we are much more tuned in as to groundwater flow patterns from the center buildings because of our wastewater study. So we know specifically that some of the buildings potentially to be connected are not in that groundwater subwatershed. So that would be my first, intuitive response. The second is that overwhelmingly, the scale of water that we're talking about would be an immeasurable, quite literally an immeasurable change in.
You and I may agree on that.
The water table.
Whether or not people who.
Oh, sure. Well, then that would be the message that I would portray to those folks.
This is why Joe is going to be at Lisa and Andrew's presentation, because we do need to reassure people that the standard is no harm.
Right.
And, honestly, I don't understand the logic in that, because when we put the wells in on the golf course, that did not impact any other part of the island with regards to flooding. It's not like you're taking water from one area. It's not like this, the way water flows.
I
So,
understand.
But Ken is right that our job is to receive the concerns
That's all.
and process them. And
You've heard
and then-
the concern, right, Peter?
No, yes, absolutely. And it's kind of constant. There are going to be other concerns saying like, okay, well, I'm in the near shore, so why should I care about people in the center getting water? And I think that really people do have to understand that we are approaching the whole island, not letting go of any area. There are actions in each area, they're specific to those areas, and they all kind of have to interlock and fit together.
Yeah, look, I suppose that's a good question. And that's, like you said, Peter, our role is in answering and disseminating that information.
Receiving it, hearing it.
Yeah, listen.
We got to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, it's also very relevant, and Andrew can certainly speak to this, that, moving water of this volume is minuscule in terms of its impact.
Right.
We're talking about moving literally a few hundred feet up the street. Massive systems like New York City move billions of gallons of water from hundreds of miles away, just to give a sense of scale of, environmental impact and infrastructure, so.
We're not going to be tipping the poles of the planet.
No. Although, yeah.
and again, I think if we use West Neck Water as a model to that question, we can see easily that it did not negatively impact anywhere.
And it might be helpful to explain to them, not just that they're in a different watershed, but that means that the water is flowing away from them, not toward them. Because, if the concern is that water is going to be coming into their area, right, flowing down into the kettle holes that have been filling up and causing problems in high rains.
Yeah, right.
Then explaining that you're in a separate watershed, which means the water is running away from them. So this whole area is running the opposite direction that they're concerned about.
So if we don't have the science, then we have to do the science. And where we do have the science and can explain it clearly and have confidence in it. So that just gives us a sense of where we're at now in the conversation about Sachem's Woods. Very, very briefly, we're on some sort of a hold with the Centerway system.
The center, right, so with the retraction of the school, strategy within the engineering department and their approach, our approach to this project is simply to revisit the participants to the system between the school's removal from a flow perspective and with the potentially forthcoming master planning of the town hall facility. Two major, or now one major variable remains as to what our infrastructure needs will be for this facility. So we need more data to understand the best path forward on that particular project.
Related to that area on advanced systems versus the Nitrix type of system, it would be really handy to have a fact sheet where we could line up the good news, bad news of each of the systems, so to speak. So there'll be no ambiguity. Some of the issues that are coming up, I find it's hard to refute some of them about cost and the removal of certain contaminants, the benefit for future testing and removal of,
Right, these are complex discussions, it's hard to have.
yeah, and to kind of like be able to lay it out into a simplest format we could and ask our vendor, Nitrix vendor, maybe to help us create that fact sheet. So
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And in the engineering report, there are 2 or 3 consecutive pages that do a technology review, specifically addressing other techniques, what the outputs are. Right, so that can be boiled down. And I think it's also really important. I had a discussion with someone in the community just this week, and there was a lot of conversation about, Nitrix, IA, and the language being used, the terminology about system type it can be very confusing. I find that particularly on the island, the phrase IA has been pumped very hard for good reason that this is the right, but that's an umbrella for a lot of technology types. What's happening at the school now is
Innovative, alternative.
sewage system, but it's a series of IA systems. What we're really talking about in the center wastewater study is a concept of a, centralized system versus individual on-site systems. And what technology specifically is on the back end is, I don't want to say like a mundane detail, but there's a lot of change. You could have a centralized system that goes to Manwaring Road or Clinowickus Airfield or anywhere. And you could have, by definition, IA technology on the back end of that. What we're really discussing in terms of the infrastructure choice is whether we're going to look at centralized systems that will collect and contain the flow to one location for higher levels of treatment, or if it's a decentralized system where each particular facility is looking at their own smaller version of treatment. And that treatment scale, for instance, Nitrix could be used on the individual system level as well, just like Fuji or HydroAction have been used in centralized systems. So it's important to draw that distinction that one is not necessarily a commitment. One infrastructure concept is not a commitment necessarily to the technology, but that in working through the centralized model, Nitrix was a good fit. Did it have to be the ultimate choice? No, not necessarily, but that's, I think, not a reason to put all your eggs in one basket or the other.
And I think there's a lot of things too that get a little blurry about what is your individual responsibility as a homeowner within an advanced system that you have installed on a regular basis, and the expenses, the electricity, the inspections and so forth, versus the centralized as to who would be responsible,
Right, but again, right now, it's centralized for the town buildings. So one more question on that, the level of confusion. The Nitrix system is a nitrogen reducing system, so are the IA systems in general that we've talked about. You and I have spoken, and you suggested that we were also thinking about UV treatment within the centralized system.
Absolutely, and
So disinfection.
That goes back to the fundamental decision here and concept is when you're talking about centralized treatment, you have the opportunity to expand and modify your treatment types and techniques on the individual scale. In some cases, you can add additional treatment units. You can add treatment for emerging contaminants, disinfection, but it tends to make a lot less sense when you're talking about systems that individually are handling much smaller flow, systems that are already perhaps on a parcel that's space constrained. And so adding those additional levels of treatment become much more difficult. In the centralized model, you could have nitrogen reducing, you could have emerging contaminant removal, you could have disinfection for irrigation reuse, and you're able to plug and play in a much more economical fashion.
And that is a crucial distinction between the two approaches, an important distinction to make part of your educational efforts.
So, you're talking about economy of scale with a centralized system.
Absolutely.
And I think the public has to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. And scale is also relevant. This by almost all measures is a very, very small, there are singular buildings on the North Fork that produce as much waste in a single day as this system of 7 buildings would handle. So that's relevant as well. You don't necessarily want to project the image that this is, you have to have a large system to gain those economies of scale. We just have to step a little bit beyond the individual building, the several hundred gallons per day and be in the several thousand gallons per day range.
Right.
I have a quick question on, one of the things about the locating of the system, one of the big problems in doing it, quote unquote, around in this area was being too close to the well waters, the well supply. If we wind up with Satcham Woods potentially providing water for these folks, would that be part of your analysis or whoever's analysis it would be?
Yeah.
If you take these individual wells out of the picture and saying, okay, we don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, potentially it could be you could put a centralized system right next to the police department or whatever, I guess.
Absolutely. And potentially some of those on-site systems would no longer require variances. Separation distance is probably the primary issue with siting.
And public water is a solution in certain sense. It moves the wells away from each
You
building.
don't have to move it far, you don't have to move it away. It could happen right here. It could be a central system.
Certainly.
Okay, so that's part of the mix.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Also, don't forget, though, that some of the siting constraints were related to other things than wells, property line boundaries,
Sure, no,
neighboring wells. So as I'm reflecting on the variance list that we had done for that analysis, I can recall several that were unrelated to well separation distances, but certainly that was the
That was the element.
And also
that had a tremendous restriction.
absolutely, and certainly it carries the most risk as well. That is one of the primary emphasis on siting is to be certain that you're as far as possible from any drinking water intake, especially in a groundwater shed such as this, where water flow can be slow and somewhat deceiving and dynamic in terms of its direction. So separation distance arguably in this area is paramount in terms of analysis.
Great. All right. Yeah, you have another question on that?
We need to guard against creating the impression that by bringing potable water into this area, we will have solved the problem. We also need to stop
Thank you.
damaging the aquifer that we've got.
Yeah. And
Surface waters.
surface waters matter, but also remember, Shelter Island is a river and it flows from the center to the periphery in all directions. So everyone is downriver of the center. Nobody is not affected by the center. It may take 30 years, as Monantic folks have found, but everyone is affected. What happens in the center doesn't stay in the center. Okay, so
That was the most poetic. Shelter Island is a river.
Shelter Island is a river and it flows from the center.
Could you have a few bars?
I looked up at Ken and Ken and I had to say, what a poet.
Great, okay, I'll hope that sticks. I would like to flip the next two items, because we have Liz Hanley here. The irrigation system sunsetting and the cisterns are extremely important. It may integrate well in our session with GBCC, or we'll get to it. But I wanted to introduce Liz Hanley. I don't know if all of you know her. You want to say hi and say
Hi,
who you are and how.
yeah, I'm Liz Hanley and I work with the town on housing. So I chair the Community Housing Board. And then I also chaired the Community Housing Fund Advisory Board, which put together our housing plan. So I just kind of really wanted to start a conversation, and Peter and I have been talking. There's a couple things that I kind of wanted to, that it seemed appropriate, that we should be having some joint conversations on. So again, one of the things I work with the town on is trying to think of community housing, so affordable housing solutions. So that are both like affordable and long-term for the town. So, you know, we're looking at some different solutions, both in the form of ADUs, developed by private homeowners with some grants that we've secured through the state. And then also doing rental units through the town. And, you know, and so that's kind of a different, we've got kind of a mix of different solutions. But one of the reasons that I really wanted to come and kind of talk to you guys and kind of think about how we could potentially partner is one of the things I think that comes up when anybody thinks about building anything is that everyone goes, oh my gosh, the water. And, you know, and especially it is something that gets
Weaponized.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say it, but that, yes, especially against anything that is considered affordable. That's definitely something that we've noticed. And I guess I would also say, just kind of outside of that, our real goal at the Community Housing Board is to, obviously, we want to serve the community by making sure that they have a place to live, right? That is our charge. But that said, we are all residents of this island and are very concerned about also our water table. And we don't want to create housing in a way that negatively impacts the water table. So we want to be, we've really tried to, as we move forward, be as thoughtful as we can about water sourcing and how to deal with, you know, our sanitary flow issues. But one of the things, you know, we had a discussion that came up and I realized, oh my gosh, you know, we kind of got into the science, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit. And I thought, if only there was, we started talking about restrictions in the nearshore overlay. We have an ADU grant. So we've been just, you know, people coming to us, oh, could I do it here? Could we do it there? What's the zoning, right? So we're kind of thinking about it. And I realized as we got into it, a lot of the questions that we were getting were about like, oh, how would the septic systems work? How would the wastewater treatment? And so Bran from my committee is bringing all the notes from your summer sessions, and we're all studying them and looking through. I'm meeting with Meg, I'm learning about IA systems. And I was like, and I realized at that moment, there's a whole other committee and this is all they do. And I thought, well, if we know about housing and kind of what we think would work economically for the island, and you guys know about water and have some ideas for what you think is viable and also advisable, right, for wastewater treatment, we were thinking it might make a lot of sense to kind of to partner together, or maybe kind of put together a working group to kind of think about these things on a jointly, right? Because I think if we think about water conservation without thinking about how that really works for housing, that can be problematic. Or if we think about housing without thinking about how the water and the waste work together, that can be problematic, and you can get solutions that are good for one thing and that aren't good for the other. And I know I can speak for the Community Housing Board, where we want to look for solutions that are good for both. So we're really invested in that, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel.
We'll go.
Yeah.
No, I was,
Okay, so
I agree 100%. Basically, what you're saying, it's a joint effort.
And we have to find win-win. Now, one of the,
Yeah.
as Liz and I were talking, one of the things that she made me recognize was that, first of all, you know, they have a limited amount of funds. We have a limited amount of funds, but for them to add on, like, we're going to create a system and it's going to have a positive impact on the water supply. We're going to put in that affordable housing and also have super duper advanced systems around it. And now it goes beyond what they can budget. And then we have a problem because WQI funds, as far as I can tell, are not permitted to be used for anything for development.
Yeah.
Right? So we do need to, there's a connect the dots and a not connect the dots part of this. We need to think about the advisable water projects that stand on their own, but also stand next to or along with doing affordable housing, doing, making sure that the impacts on communities of further development are also, there's infrastructure available to address.
Yeah. And so even with like talking about, like as we kind of consider, and I know that, I'm just bringing this up in the moment, but just kind of thinking about the wastewater situation that we've been talking about in the center. And I know we're back to the drawing board and, it's like, we're kind of going, but like, in what ways as we kind of think about some of these centralized systems, like I think somebody up here mentioned how renters can get disenfranchised. How do we consider how both potentially town rental units or, and again, just kind of putting that out here, any private homeowners who might want to create rental or long-term housing for fully, for year-round residents, and who also want to make sure that they're being mindful of the, you know what I mean? Like what opportunities are we creating so that we can have both a vibrant year-round community that can live somewhat affordably, and that we're doing right by our water table, right? So that we still have potable water. And so how do we consider both of those things at the same time?
And so a big part of that is exactly, thank you, Liz, for joining us. What we're finding here, though, is it's really important for us to be attending other committees and sitting in or zooming in on other committees and doing this integration work and thinking about their issues, not just our own issues. So anyway, this is going to be continued. Go ahead.
Committees as well.
Yeah.
When I was in your organization many, many years ago, when we came up with ideas as to where to put things, it seemed it's location. Because when you find a place that you want to put something, okay?
Yeah.
In other words, it starts with that. Where is it?
Right.
We knew where your plans were as to what was available
Yeah.
acreage
Yeah.
or something. That would help us understand the area. We had the lead time, we could then
Yeah.
resolve the
Yeah.
water issue. We couldn't necessarily resolve the septic issue, but in any case.
Yeah, and that is actually, so one of the things that I would say is, and that's one of the, so there's kind of a zoning question, some zoning questions I would love to, we should probably think about together.
We should table them for now,
Yeah.
just because time is so short.
Yeah.
However, Ken is exactly right. Liz and I, our conversation, we had free time to hang out on the weekend. And your conversation went exactly there. And then in the days after, gears started turning in my head, what you might be able to do, right. So absolutely, we want to be on the specific projects that they're thinking about, not today, but.
Close-in projects that you have right on the drawing board are pretty close to it.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, so I mean, and that's why I'm here, so we do have a project that we are looking at. And so, I guess what I would, so we're kind of pulling together stuff. We're at Suffolk Health right now. But for me, I'll just tell you, we have two things that are up, right? So we've got rentals, a rental project that we're looking at. We're kind of figuring out that piece of it. I think it would be wonderful to, if we're able to either do a subcommittee or, we can come here, or maybe one of the two of you can come there to weigh in on what we've got going on. Again, we're just trying to learn all the science. So if you guys already know it and have that background, gosh, we would love to have you. And then the second thing that we have, right, so we've got like the specific, we'd love to get your input on that, to get your feedback on it. Maybe there's things we aren't thinking, we want to know about them. And
What's the
then
parcel number?
it's 12 Southbury, right? It's the old highway barn property.
Yeah, right, that's what I
Yeah.
figured you were talking about.
So that's what we're looking at right now. And then secondly, one of the other things, the second thing, and we don't have to get into it, but just to kind of tell you what's on our mind that we want to talk about, is we do have this $2 million ADU grant with the ability to go back to the state for more money. So thinking about the right and appropriate place to put these ADUs is top of mind for us. We do have a, you know,
Is that your number, 80?
No, ADU.
Oh,
accessory dwelling unit.
Accessory dwelling, yeah, no.
Now, it's, excuse me, Liz.
That's a big project.
Yeah.
Acronyms get you every time, every time.
ADUs, I mean, you can't really isolate them. I would imagine they're in a variety of areas that you're talking about, so.
So to that discussion, one of the things, and again, I'm just gonna give an overview, I wanna be mindful of you guys' time and, you know, thanks for having me here. Is one of the things, just in general, that has kind of come up for us is as we start thinking about the right and appropriate places, both for the community and for the water table, that these ADUs should go, and as we look at what the zoning tells us is you know, what's legal for the zoning and kind of, as we just like think about it, because lots of people are coming to us, can I put it here, can I put it there? And, you know, we have to like look up, well, can you, why can't you do it? You know, all those things. That's what I answer like 50 emails every day. So one of the things that came up for us that was just really interesting was as we were starting to look at, and just as this is an example, we don't have to dig into it, but one of the things we were looking at, there was, we can't do ADUs in the near shore overlay. So we started to look into, okay, this is people asking us, why is that? So we looked at it's a community housing license, it's prohibited there. And so then we kind of looked at, well, okay, if it wasn't prohibited, just as for our own edification, what other safeguards would be in place? What are the safeguards that Suffolk Water has in place, and would they be sufficient, right? So we just got to ask the question. So we started to look at that. And then one of the first things, so we're educating ourselves, I'm learning about IA systems and all the different things and the water table. Anyway, we're getting into it. And one of the things that basically came up, which was kind of the argument that we got to behind all the arguments, was this, which was sobering for us, was that the current zoning wasn't sufficient to protect the water on the island. And this was one of the only ways that they thought that it was able to control growth. And so since they were not able to, because the town code was deficient in protecting the water, this is the argument that we're trying to understand, it was deficient in these areas, and there was this one control, you couldn't let off of that because there was so many other problems.
So what you're saying is the argument was that controlling where housing develops is sort of a zoning tool.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is lacking.
And so, and of course, our committee is very concerned about clean water. And so we thought, oh my gosh, well, we don't want to do anything that's going to mess up the water. But if the zoning is deficient in these areas, if it's not taking care of the water, then that's a bigger problem than just little old us at community housing. And that's probably a bigger look, right? So one of the things that we had kind of talked about is, I wonder if there's a way to look at the zoning, this is again as a larger question, where we're looking at what's appropriate for a site based on, you know, whether the metric is what the sanitary flow is, or the bedroom count, or what the what the science of that we're getting back from the well reads or whatever is on that site, rather than we absolutely can't do an affordable unit. And I was like, well, what does really an affordable unit have to, you know, either the site can support 4 people and a sanitary load of XYZ. I don't understand why it matters if there's 2 bedrooms here and 1 bedroom here, or 3 bedrooms here, you know?
Some of that is county.
No, I understand.
County regulation.
Understood.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine. But we have local prohibitive zoning around affordable housing. And so one of the things that our committee was wondering is thinking about is how can we back up and really take a science-based approach that kind of talks about the actual impact on the water and the appropriate sanitary flow for each property outside of whether, you know, I guess I just don't understand why a unit being affordable has anything to do with whether it should be there or not.
Rich houses make as much for Nick.
I think it's like, yeah, I mean, everybody kind of poops about the same amount depending on your tax bracket. So I just am kind of, I don't know.
It's not a logical thing.
Yeah.
The pushback we encountered is, well, you know, with accessory sleeping quarters, it's only used seasonally. Whereas with an ADU, it would be annually, but Joe and I have had this conversation, I think I get this right, which is, an argument can be made that seasonal use is almost worse.
Well, and that's one of the things,
Because
again,
it's a high demand in a drought time.
and that is one of the things that, you know, like we started to like look at it, and as I was kind of like learning more about the folks who actually design wastewater systems, that often that they have to be designed, if they're seasonal use, they need to have a higher load because it's, you know, like if you think about it, I think it was, you explained it really well for me. I am a household, we go to work, we come back, I'm in the house only, in the evenings or whatever. But if for a summer rental, I might have the bedrooms filled to more capacity than I would necessarily do year round. I'm not gonna like have my aunt sleeping in the same room all year, but like for the summer I might have a couple kids in there. So you're gonna have more people. And they're going to be there all day, which is fine. It's a beautiful place to vacation. Like, please come to our island.
We know that IA systems work better when they're used regularly as opposed to.
Exactly. And I think also, like, I wonder if, and again, this is just, spending a couple months looking at it, like, are our local guidelines for how we do septic systems around, seasonal rentals appropriate? Or, are they designed for a high enough load of what they're actually, there's just, you scratch it and there's all sorts of questions.
Mm-hmm. So we won't.
Yeah, but we don't have to get into it, but there's a lot there.
And we expect you to come back to us with these, in the months to come, with projects that you're thinking about, specific questions,
Locations.
specific areas.
Yeah.
We can brainstorm ideas about how to make things, how to win-win situations.
Yeah, and we would love it, if it's possible, I'd just like to invite, if anyone would like to come to the.
Yeah, I think that I would be willing to come to the
Just
housing.
even to just like hear,
Exactly, hear what you're doing, get an
Yeah, because
idea.
there might also be details that I should be carrying back to you. Obviously, we're in the middle of two massive projects. And I would hate to miss a detail that would be super relevant that I just don't know, because.
It's important for us to go and report back to ourselves. And that's true of, I attended the planning board. I mean, we're attending different boards that have, peripheral things that are peripheral to the things we're thinking about, especially with nearshore overlay issues.
But mostly I just wanted to say that, like I said, that we're really interested in partnering with you and just kind of trying to figure out some win-win solutions around our specific projects, and really just kind of thinking about water and zoning and how to make it better, how to make better decisions for water and how to make
These
it
are
possible.
these are your zoning.
Oh, yeah, I know. Wait.
When are your meetings?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
Pardon?
It's the 13th.
Yeah, so July 13th, 7:00 on Thursdays.
I may join on Zoom.
Yeah, join on Zoom. We're a friendly bunch.
Can't do that, obviously.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
I can't do that, but I could do August.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah. All right,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz, very much.
Appreciate you guys having me.
It's good.
So
stuff.
again, it's 3:35. The two other topics that we haven't taken on, both of which I think are really important, they also fit well with what's going to be happening July 17th here. So irrigation system sunset and appropriate use of cisterns, tanks, and water storage, I think is going to, unless you guys all want to hang and keep going.
I just have a question.
Yes.
Because Jerry brought this up about, he thought that it was going to be sunsetted. Is it not? Who makes that decision?
What happened was the board back in, was it 2015 or 2013?
Yeah, 5:50.
Chose not to honor the original sunsetting agreement, and so they extended it indefinitely. They didn't actually change the law to sundown well-drawn irrigation in the near shore. So they grandfathered it essentially. If you had a well-drawn irrigation system, you can continue to use it. They were doing water testing to make sure they weren't salting those wells, those irrigation wells. But what Jerry was proposing is to actually sundown those systems and say, okay, you can no longer have these. You have this amount of time to transition from a well-drawn to cistern irrigation or to abandon your irrigation system.
So has the town board talked about the time frame and the mechanism to do that, or is it still?
We're trying to figure
Contemplative.
out the result that we're looking for. We understand we don't want well-drawn irrigation in the near shore. just don't want it. All the well-drawn irrigation should go away. But then the question is, if it moves to cistern, can we allow roof water collection in that cistern that's then used for irrigation? Should we allow trucked-in water for the irrigation, a combination of the two? What's the best thing to then require in lieu of? So that's kind of the question.
And you also got the county that limits an irrigation well. I think it's 45 GPM.
Right.
So.
Ken wanted to.
Just to clear the air, and there are locations, people who are grandfathered into collecting water from their roofs into the cistern on the island.
And I think
Okay, and that's happening on bootleggers, for instance.
So you're saying that that is irrevocable?
No, they were grandfathered in on that side of the equation, in other words, before
Right.
this. Don't collect.
the grandfathering in had a sunset, and that's the question.
No, that's irrigation systems.
Yes, right.
The cistern collection is different.
This is different.
Yeah.
So the few people who do have cisterns and that's their only potable water source,
Yes.
they've typically, I believe the person I'm thinking has two cisterns. One that is trucked in water for their potability, the other one is roof runoff that they use for gray water kind of activity. So it's
They use both.
yeah, they use both, but you know, that's harder to get approved. Like if you're gonna do rain capture and everything, use that for irrigation. You actually can't use it for topping off your pool. It has to be potable water for topping off your pool. That's county regulation. So there's things that we have to look at. So we have to look at it a little deeper before we just pull the trigger and then realize.
And I, as I understand how things work, I think the board is also turning to us to
To see if you have recommendations.
Yes, and I do have a strong feeling that there's another solution that keeps being left off the table, which is filling cisterns from either Center or wherever, winter pumped water, which means storage. But that winter pumped water is free water. We do not keep that water. It flows out the saltwater interface. We lose that water. We get 9 billion gallons of rainfall. We lose 4 billion gallons through the saltwater interface because it has to go somewhere.
Transpiration.
If we do lose to transpiration as well, but 4 billion of it is lost through the saltwater interface according to the studies that we've seen. So if we are to pump water in the winter, any water we pump in the winter, we wouldn't have held on to anyway. If it were placed in cisterns in the nearshore overlay areas, it would be pure contribution in the summer, not drawn from anybody's supply.
Do you have a visual of this type of cistern?
So I think storage tanks, holding tanks, cisterns everywhere is critical to evening out the boom bust cycles that we're in with climate change, drought, and flooding.
Peter, the fact that that water is not percolating and pushing out means that the salt is going to come in.
If you were to pull in the summer when so where you're changing the equation.
The salt water is there in the winter too.
As long as the pressure is heavier going out than in, you're not getting saltwater intrusion.
It only can go.
All right, so I don't want, there's a lot of hydrology here that is beyond my pay grade and also beyond what we're going to talk about in 10 minutes in overtime.
Yes.
But it also brings up the second topic,
Yes,
which
it
is
does.
the need for a town-based hydrologist. I have in email said to Joe, the town is not doing itself a favor by not having a half-time or quarter-time or some-time position
Agreed.
Agreed.
in the engineering department for hydrological expertise beyond our pay grade.
Yep.
Doesn't have to be in full-time
pitch, yeah,
employee.
Andrew.
It can be.
Comment on the cisterns.
Yeah.
You look very sanguine.
And the essentially retention basins or equalization facilities. whatever.
Buffer.
One needs to think through the volume requirements. Equalization tanks, cisterns, and so forth, for the purposes of equaling, smoothing out seasonal variations, are enormous.
Yes.
So you need to kind of, if they're going to have any impact, they need to be giant.
Yes.
So we need to kind of be realistic
Yes.
about what they might be able to do or not do.
Yes.
Okay, that's one
From an
comment.
ROI standpoint, in other words, is it worth my money to put one of these?
Correct.
Got 5,000 gallons.
Yes, but if you're shutting down people's personal irrigation systems, there may be another option to keep them open. And keeping them open has value because it keeps the ground moist and absorbent.
So then I'll just, that water's going somewhere now. It's probably pushing out, it's going into the aquifer and it's pushing out against that salt water. So if you trap it, you need to think that through.
Absolutely.
So, and that does go to point number 10, which is the need for someone who has the expertise to kind of think this out
Analytic work on that.
on a holistic and analytic.
So,
Authoritative.
right.
Yes.
So I almost feel
Study
like,
this.
this conversation has gone far enough that I would almost ask a question, or call for a vote. Does this committee feel like this is something we all agree on, that the town needs a hydrologist?
I have a comment, and my comment is expertise
Yes,
undoubtedly would be valuable.
right.
But as to whether or not that expertise lies in a single individual is really open to question. Because now we're talking about, well, where are we going to find that single individual that's seen hundreds of aquifers like ours, dealt with all of these issues, both public and private? The answer is no, that person does not exist. So my recommendation would be to explore consulting services from a firm with expertise in this area.
So that's what we have been doing.
You're tapping into expertise that goes well beyond the scope of one individual's career.
So I don't know, I don't think we're going to get to an answer to whether, that is what we've been doing. The question is whether the alternative of having somebody within our staff, the town staff,
Become
is
familiar with
important.
Colorado.
Okay, so question, following up on that, is what we've been doing through consultants project-based, or is it retainer-based?
And planning, long-term planning.
Yeah, because the value of having a person part of your staff somehow is that they acquire institutional knowledge and they're always with you.
And they see the big picture of
And
your
they see the
island.
big picture, but they're also around the water cooler and they're part of the fabric and so forth. The disadvantage is that they don't have enough experience within their own field. A single person doesn't have enough experience within their own field to really add a lot of value. So is there a way through that by having a consulting firm who's on a retainer? And that, the argument in favor of that is that the consultants that you're getting are part of a team in their own field, so they have access to a broader base of experience. The reason that's better than having them on a retainer basis as opposed to a project basis is that they're not clear deliverables. It's not just around a particular project with a P&L for that assignment,
Yeah.
but they become part of your decision-making team.
And you pay for them by the hour. I would take it a step further, and maybe there is a role for someone who is a specialist in hydrology, whose purpose is to build that institutional knowledge, but be augmented by a consulting firm that then provides the real expertise, or for whom we can go, or the board or this committee can pick their brains,
You know,
ideas.
a hydrologist doesn't work in isolation. You know, I'm sort of getting this feeling like we're getting one person who has a limited experience, but I would think that that is not the case, that engineers work in consortiums, they have educational upgrades. I mean, why can't they be part of a greater body of hydrologists and find the information they need?
Network.
So they're part of a de facto. And so what do you think, Joe? I mean,
Well, you bring up a lot of good points, Lisa. First of all, I'm sensing that the group here is ultimately saying either we're not equipped or we don't have the capacity to make real hard bullet point suggestions for policy changes. That may be the case. But we haven't quite been tasked with exactly an ask yet. This is very vague. Irrigation system, sunset. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Some of this stuff is relatively simple. A lot of this stuff has even been studied before by consultants on a project basis. The fact is, we don't have a lot of irrigation systems. There are about 60 of them. We've been doing ongoing chloride tests seasonally to measure their localized impact. Are they actually degrading their water quality? The results are mixed. In some cases, yes. In some cases, no.
I'm talking about the hydrologist.
Yeah, I'll get to that once. Yeah, I'll get in that. Right, yeah. Some of these other policies, the use of cisterns, tanks, water storage, what Peter said at scale, Andrew, is very difficult to stop this seasonal change, but that might not be exactly what we're going for here. We're talking about offering a service to or an opportunity for homeowners to now be able to irrigate their lawn with water that they captured over the winter. And we're talking about a few hundred or a few thousand gallons. Arguably, that's totally insignificant. We can crunch those numbers. We don't need to have a high-powered consulting firm look at, these complex problems right now. There are some really easy ones that we can get to. The other point is that we are on a trajectory now where it's starting to accelerate with the use of cisterns. In policy, the town has relied on cisterns as a way to permit arguably excessive water use. Because we have weaponized, in some cases, water extraction, the loophole to accessory water use further development is, I'll just buy my water from someplace else. Therefore, I can have a pool, I can have fresh water service at my dock, and I will import the water. When this law first took effect, I think that's a practical approach. You say we've banned irrigation, but I'm not going to stop you from using water if you get it from someplace else. Every application that comes in now before the planning boards, anything controversial, large, that is the workaround. I will just buy my water. And so I'm not saying it's it's an emergency problem right now, but the fact is more and more water trucks will continue to be relied on. In some cases, it's for required domestic use, a parcel that literally has no potable water beneath it and no public water connection. In other cases, this has just been a crutch for accessory water use. And I would suggest to the Water Advisory Board that we as members of the community look at, rather than developing a bullet point policy on who can have a cistern, how big it is, that's kind of complicated details. But what we can suggest to the board is a more sustainable policy where we're saying, if you've got a property that's water compromised, your expectation is that you can use as much water as can safely be delivered on your property. If you live in a neighborhood that's compromised for water, Silver Beach, Montclair, perhaps that's the place where you can't have a pool, or you can't have as deep of a pool because it doesn't make sense. And we're not going to permit water being trucked in from our neighboring communities. It's irresponsible from their own water supply issues. It's also something that they're not happy about and will likely end. I'm promoting, and I would suggest to the Water Advisory Committee that we look on suggesting a water sustainability policy in terms of development. And the onus on proving how much water you can use on your parcel is for the applicant to come to the respective board for. If an applicant says, I want a 7,000 square foot house with however many bedrooms, a pool, sauna, I want water out to my dock, and they've got 4 feet of freshwater lens beneath them, that's a pretty clear indicator, no, you can't do that. And for the sake of the rest of the community and quality of life, we're not going to permit them to outsource 10,000 gallons a week so that they can water their grass, because that's unfair to everybody else as well. However, if you have another parcel in Hay Beach with 45 feet of freshwater lens beneath them, and those folks have the space and the interest in having a pool, then that makes a lot of sense. Perhaps that's the application for development that we should be looking at. And that's, I think, the role that the WAC could play here, is in promoting some sustainable, comprehensive policy that, one, allows a particular private property owner to utilize the water beneath their property in a way that suits their needs without negatively impacting their neighbors. And it gets us away from this incredibly corrosive policy of just trucking in more and more water, particularly for accessory, I don't want to say unnecessary, but
Non-essential.
non-essential
Hey,
use.
Joe, I have a question. So folks are supposed to fill their pools with water off island.
Only when it's being drained.
Oh, is that right? And how do we know that that's the case? I mean, do we measure the volumes of all the pools and then
They submit,
compare that with
they submit
water?
receipts. Yeah, they submit receipts for the water purchase from.
One time?
One time.
What about topping up?
Topping up is done on the,
Homeowner.
on the well, yeah.
On the well.
Now, if the pool is drained, it needs to be refilled for maintenance or winter, whatever, then it needs to be sourced from off island.
West Neck Water never allowed anything but handheld sprinklers or water irrigation and absolutely no pool filling from the system. And it was easy to monitor because, we knew how many pools were in the area.
75.
And we knew and I knew because when my pool went down to a certain level, it's either I'm gonna get a truck in or somebody's gonna use their tap. So we had a very good visual of how often trucks were called in to top off pools.
Yes.
It was a tremendous psychological tool for homeowners to conserve. And I believe the town really should employ it, that type of, severe restriction. Now, you're talking about limiting construction in the priciest parcels where you're going to get the most severe pushback from people saying, this is my land. You don't tell me I can't build a 7,000.
I'm not saying that they can't, and I'm specifically not painting in a broad stroke, you can't do this here. I'm saying if you are an applicant, especially if you're seeking a special permit or a large house, the burden is on you to demonstrate to the approving board that you can sustain the uses that you're proposing. There are lots of.
As a buyer of the asset in the first place.
Exactly, and quite frankly, that's not a difficult study to achieve with this, with a simple test bore or some well data. You can understand what kind of. The folks in this room generally know even by neighborhood where you're at risk for certain things versus not. So I am actually against a broad policy that says such and such a neighborhood can't do this or do that. But if you are coming before any various committee or board for approval, or even the building department for some sort of project, the burden should be on the applicant to demonstrate that they can do that.
But we have. Sorry, go ahead, Andrew. No, go ahead.
So by extension, I think actually you've made a really compelling argument for bringing hydrological expertise, making it available to the town. Because if have a 50-foot lens underneath my house in Hay Beach, okay, that water's going somewhere if I'm not using it. Because the aquifer is all one. It's going out to the saltwater interface, and it's pushing the saltwater back, or it's going to an adjoining low-lying parcel and feeding somebody's 5-foot lens. So there's a policy issue in there about whether the water underneath my house actually is just mine to tap, or whether it's.
Well, it's not. I'll stop you right there. The water beneath your house belongs to the people of the state of New York. So that already, is a great indicator that, because we've heard that before. This is my property, my water, Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so where that takes me
Yeah.
is actually the town I think, needs expertise available to it in hydrology to help sort this stuff out. And
Do you have a resistance to
No.
having that?
and to also hopefully de-weaponize and depoliticize
The discussion, yeah.
and bring it to actually an academic discipline that has principles that there are certain people who are trained to apply. I'm not a hydrologist, okay? I ran surface water companies. You can see the water in the river. You can see your plant sucking it out, okay? Groundwater to me has always been a bit of a mystery, okay? Because you never really know where it's going, how much is there, what's feeding it, all that sort of stuff. So hydrology demystifies it to the extent it can. And here we are, a community that relies entirely on groundwater. And the resource is getting stressed. And it just strikes me that we should have really good expertise available to us.
Doug made his point that the consultants are often cost effective, and I get that. However, I personally also feel where you are going, that we want to build in-house expertise and be able to say to the community, we have that.
Well, so that's that's kind of that's an institutional and an organizational development question. The first question is, do we need it? In my opinion, we need it. The second question is, how does a town of our population most cost effectively get the best expertise? Okay, does it do it through a consulting retainer agreement? Does it do it by hiring people who are connected with consultants? I mean, how to actually do that? That's an organizational development question. But the first question to me is, like, it's obvious, we need it. Then we get into, okay, how to deliver.
Best way to implement.
Right.
And I think that's what we're being asked, is do we need it? And we're all saying, well, not all, but we
I'll
do.
make a motion.
I say yes,
That
we
we
need
need
it.
a hydrologist, whether it's on a consulting or part-time basis at this point.
So why don't we generalize it a bit and say, we need
Motion.
access to the expertise.
Right. Of a hydrologist.
Not on a project basis, but as a recurring body of expertise and knowledge available to the town in all of its decision-making around policies, around zoning, around all of the issues.
Let me slow you down. Coco?
Yes.
You didn't get that because he kind of went on and on, but we kind of want to get that. So let's try to start again.
Okay.
We want a kind of a motion.
So I'll make a motion that the
WAC
that the
says-
WAC supports the town having access to hydrological expertise
Yes.
to assist in the planning and the management of the town's water resources.
Sure.
Perfect.
Okay, stop.
Okay, we have a motion.
I make a motion to approve that.
Well, I think you need a second, and then we have votes. We're voting. Yes, we're all
Aye.
in favor? Okay, we just did something.
You did.
All right,
2 hours.
that was unanimous.
We'll figure it out.
We need to do it somehow. Thank you.
What do you need, Amber?
Next year's budget.
All right, I have another motion that I would like to hear. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
You have questions.
Oh, questions, yes, I'm sorry, actually. So there's a handout.
Stella.
Okay, Stella, yes.
Sorry, I usually try to be
No.
quiet.
No, I'm sorry.
Just with respect to what you just voted on, which I think is a fantastic idea, it's not only like properties and what's under each property. As we start thinking about introducing water districts, it's also what's the impact on the water district? So we've got West Neck, we've got obviously the Heights. I mean, even though Deering Harbor is a separate entity, but they're still using the aquifer. So I just want to throw that out there. It's not just individuals.
So in terms of the analytic work that a hydrologist could do.
Correct.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. Are there other questions or comments from online? Okay, so we have a motion to adjourn.
You got it.
Second.
All in favor? All right. Have a great week, July 4th weekend.